Well, greetings and salutations and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast, episode number 50. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. Our 50th show.
We made it.
Half a hundo.
Wow.
When I originally thought about saying that, I was going to say 100, but then I said, you know what? I want to sound like a cool kid today.
Yeah.
We have hung half a hundo on the podcast community, but 50, that's damn hard to believe, you know?
It is.
Almost a full year of this Newsman Weekly audio-visual shenanigans / clown car. When we came up with this idea last year, the bosses tried to tell us that a weekly show was a bad idea. Too much work, they said.
Won't never happen.
Won't last, they said. Not enough material, they said. Try it every other week or even once a month. But I said, you know what? I'm too hard-headed. We believed in ourselves. We believe in our audience. And guess what? We were right. We're still here. And so are you. We know you got a lot of choices in a media-crazy world. There's 1.5 million 0.17 podcasts out there. And we're just glad you choose to spend time with us each and every week. So please, if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to this show and give it a good rating.
Amen.
So we encourage you to do that. While we're thanking people, thanks also to local country singer Luke Watson. Jesus, let me back up. Ready? Delete this.
We're rolling.
We'll go in 3, 2, 1. While we're thanking, by the way, folks, we have never edited this show.
And we won't.
And we've told people it's plausibly live, but we could go back and edit if they said something incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
But in 50 shows, nobody said anything more incredibly stupid than me, and we've never edited that out. So, while we're thanking people, thanks also to local country singer Luke Watson for writing and singing what quickly became this show's theme song. I don't think he wrote Smoke and Drink with this show in mind, but hey, I don't know. My thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee for sponsoring this show and for being the absolute best partner to the Newsman Weekly. Every day just starts better with great coffee, and our friend Paul Kimmerling and his baristas at Relax simply have the best in town at 105 North Main Street in downtown Mansfield. So stop what you're doing, get over there, and get a cup.
Don't get hit by a construction.
Oh, yeah. Well,
just
maybe,
bear with it.
But you know what? Just deal with it. Walk yourself over there. Get a coffee. Get pastry from Blackbird Bakery inside the shop. No better way to start your day. And you tell them the newsman from Richland Source sent you. I am joined again today by Zach Heiser, the executive producer of Newsman Weekly, who's been with me since this craziness started. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning, Carl.
What a nightmare. What a nightmare scenario for the National Basketball Association. Two of the smallest markets in the NBA, Oklahoma City and Indiana. Those two square off Thursday in the NBA Finals. No New York, no Los Angeles, no Boston, not even a Chicago, Golden State, or God forbid, Cleveland. This cannot be what Adam Silver was hoping for when these playoffs started, what now seems like months ago. So, give me your complete reaction, Heiser.
What, you don't like a Midwestern NBA Finals
matchup?
Little youthful talent here.
I'm not going to watch any of it
just
anyway.
Fly over country to you or what?
I'm just saying, this can't be what the NBA had in mind in terms of ratings.
Probably not. I mean, OKC was definitely favored to get there. They're probably the best team in basketball. But Indiana's they've been kind of a good story. I don't think it's a nightmare scenario. I think it's not gonna be the highest rated. There's no LeBron James, there's no Boston, there's no LA in it, but they're two for basketball fans, which there are some of us out there. This is a pretty fun matchup.
Now, where does Oklahoma City play? I don't even know where they play at.
I would guess Oklahoma City.
Is it Oklahoma City or is it a bigger city? I mean, is that like a big enough? Really, I had no idea. I thought maybe they played in Bartlesville or Tulsa.
I don't know exactly.
Hayden, while you're sitting there doing nothing else,
okay.
Google Oklahoma City. I need
Zach's
to know
on it. He's got quick typing fingers.
I need to know the population of Oklahoma City versus Indianapolis.
Okay, Oklahoma City.
I mean, it's going to sound really awful, but I mean, the only time I've ever heard Oklahoma City is the Oklahoma City bombing, right? Was that Oklahoma? Yeah. So horrible.
Oklahoma City population about 680,000 people.
Wow, Carl. Yeah.
Yeah. And what
approaching
about
7 figures?
What about Indianapolis?
So what? That's bigger than Cleveland.
Well, everything's bigger than Cleveland. I mean, Columbus is bigger than Cleveland.
It is, but it's smaller than Columbus.
Yep.
I know there's a million people in Columbus. Indy's going to definitely be more popular.
Yeah.
That's 887.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so still two cities under 1 million population.
Yep.
And two of the, I did do some research to see who the smallest market teams in the NBA were, and Oklahoma City and Indiana certainly showed up there.
Yeah.
All
Should
right.
be good basketball, though.
Well, I
Right.
look forward to Tyrese Halliburton winning
he's
the
been
MVP.
great.
Well, winning the MVP award, and maybe this time they'll actually hand it to him rather than what happened
That was
saw
great.
that.
when he dabbed up and didn't get the the Larry Bird Award for Eastern Conference.
That's what he
Finals
needed. He's
MVP.
motivated now. He
Yeah.
wants to win an MVP.
All right. We're also joined today by the official new videographer of the Newsman Weekly, North County reporter Hayden Gray, who takes over full-time starting today. He replaces Grant Ritchie, whose contract we finally broke over the weekend
Big shoes to fill.
and sent him packing. Well, kind of, yeah. Good morning, Hayden, and congratulations for being this show's new videographer for at least this week. I did note this morning you arrived 6 minutes late,
Okay.
continuing a Ritchie tradition of tardiness. Because he did say, I'll be here at 8, and he walked in at 8:06. I'm just saying.
Wow.
Well, right. I did that for my friend Richie. I wanted the adjustment for you to feel very seamless today.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm flattered. I didn't have enough going on or much to do. I kind of just look like I'm busy here every day. So I'm glad to full time be taking this over now, and we'll see what shenanigans we can get into.
I look forward to seeing shows that are in focus, have correctly spelled subtitles, or
No.
whatever you call those things that appear.
It took Richie 50 episodes for you to get rid of him?
It was a morals clause is what it boiled down to, and the morality is I couldn't do it anymore. So
Shout out Richie. We love
No,
you.
shout out Richie.
oh yeah, we all love Grant, and I know he's listening to this show. And as far as you know, Grant, I love you too. So anyway,
Wow,
no,
that's big.
I was kind to Richie in his last ever show a couple weeks ago. We did skip last week for Memorial Day. Shout out to everyone, man, woman, who's died in service to their country. That is what Memorial Day is for.
Yes.
It's not Veterans Day. People get that confused.
Yeah, I never knew there was such a confusion.
We're making up for it today, though, with probably a 2-hour show.
Oh, this show
The way
is.
It's
this
a
is
gauntlet
going.
if you're going to hang with
In fact, we have such an interesting, informative show for you today. In fact, it's like 2 shows in one. In just a little bit, we're going to be joined by Bob Ball, the chief investigator for the Richland County Coroner's Office. I've known Bob for many years. We've been at far too many death scenes together over those years. We'll talk about his work in general, but we're also going to talk about something called Retrospective Fatality Analysis. That looks at the biopsychosocial and environmental factors that precede an individual's death by suicide or other unnatural causes. Fact of the matter is we have too many suicides in Richland County, at least 20 last year in Richland County. And this kind of analysis and training that Bob and his folks are doing may help reduce those numbers, so stay tuned for that. But before then, we are going to take a few minutes to say goodbye to Mariah Thomas, Ashland Source reporter and frequent guest on the Newsman Weekly. I think we could say she's a friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
As many of you know, Mariah came to us 2 years ago, fresh out of college in Montana, through the Report for America program, and she's now heard the siren song, the siren call, to head back home to Montana. Her last official act for Source Media will be to visit with us today, so I can beat her up verbally one more time. She actually volunteered to come in and take that lashing.
She literally has a U-Haul out front.
Yes.
This is her last stop in Ohio.
Even better, her super smart father, Jim's going to join us. He delivered Mariah to Ohio 2 years ago. And since no good deed goes unpunished, he now has to come load her up and drive her back home. And we will get to that conversation in just a minute. But before then, we do have some news for you. We are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the arrest of Bryce Witchey in Mansfield. And the 29-year-old Mansfield man remains in the Richland County Jail on child pornography charges with no trial date in sight.
Has it really been a year?
He was arrested June 14th of last year. The trial had been scheduled to start June 5th, but Richland County Common Pleas Court Judge Brent Robinson last Thursday granted defense attorney Bernie Davis's request for another continuance. In his motion to delay the trial again, Davis said, quote, "More time is needed in this matter," end quote. Witchey remains in the county jail on a $500,000 cash bond. He's charged with 31 felony counts. He was initially arrested June 14th last year by Mansfield police after a woman claimed he was talking to her on social media and was seeking to have sex with her 8-year-old daughter. That arrest led to an initial charge of attempted importuning, which is a 4th-degree felony. He was later indicted by a county grand jury once the authorities got to look into his computers on 30 counts of illegal use of a minor or impaired person in nudity-oriented material or performance.
So what's the holdup with that?
I can't tell you for certain. As I told you, the line or the sentence that Bernie used is more time is needed.
Yeah,
I don't know how much more needs to be analyzed, what more he's looking for a defense, or whether some sort of a plea bargain
so you could speculate.
Could be in order. I refuse to speculate about that. I'm just saying these are things that are possible. But they'll set a new trial date, and we'll kind of go from there. Shifting gears, Mansfield City Council Tuesday night is scheduled to vote on a proposal to rezone 321 acres near Mansfield Lahm Regional Airport. Officials have said the move could help open doors to future high-quality heavy manufacturing jobs on the city's north side. The change would convert 16 parcels around Airport West and Carnes Roads to I-2 from their current I-1. The idea is to create more land that is zoned for heavy industrial use rather than the current zoning, which is in place for things like logistics, trucking, and light assembly. The City Planning Commission in April recommended the change. Barrett Thomas, the Senior Director of Economic Development for Richland Area Chamber and Economic Development, that's a lot of developments in one sentence, told Commission members it was a smart change to make. Quote, "When companies consider locating here, the top factors are speed, risk, and cost," said Thomas, who took over economic development work for the city under a contract with the Chamber when longtime Economic Development Director Tim Bowersock retired near the end of 2024. Thomas said, "By proactively zoning for heavy industry now, the city removes delays and uncertainty from the development process. Companies won't have to gamble on variances or rezoning, and they'll know from day one that they're welcomed and their project fits," he told the Planning Commission.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, I was paying attention to you, Carl, because more than likely I'll be there for you on tonight. But
yes, because I am on vacation this week and actually came in just to record this podcast because that's the kind of guy I am.
Yep, everyone give him a shout out in the comments. But I mean,
plus I didn't know that I wanted number 50 to be recorded without me being there. Just saying.
The airport, I mean, that's been a talk at county commissioners. I've heard Barrett Thomas come in. They're also looking to try and complete a water line connection project out there that's going to open up close to 500 acres for more development. So that's kind of a hot topic here lately.
Well, and I'm going to replace something I had planned to talk about. We had breaking news on Sunday evening. It's been reported by Bob Pockras on SpeedwayActionImages.com that a racer named Matt Tifft has bought the former Mansfield Speedway on the city's north side. It's a dirt track at the moment. It's going to need a lot of work. But according to the story, Tifft hopes to have some racing and non-racing events on the 180-acre site, maybe as soon as 2006. He did put up a video on Twitter, which if you guys, when you put together the show notes for this, maybe put a link to that Twitter feed. Because he said, "Left for dead, but now we're bringing it back. Mansfield Speedway is our playground, and we're just getting started. Follow the journey, chaos, and fun as we revive this legendary track."
That's fun. I like that energy.
And I know Kurt Conrad's going to be trying to get in touch with Matt and do a story about it. They are going to have to completely rebuild the racetrack itself. Over the years, it's been dirt. It went to asphalt. It's gone back to dirt. It's going to have to be completely redone. Fencing's been removed. They're going to have to put up new fencing around there.
You've got a whole section of stands that now sits at the Whippet Athletic Complex over at their football field.
Yeah, but there's so much potential there. I was there to help cover the initial NASCAR Craftsman truck race. There were 25,000 people.
Wow.
Because they actually brought in stands to accommodate that many. And I remember the night before the race, and this was kind of a bad omen. There was like a mini tornado on Saturday night that kind of came through, and it flipped over and bent and twisted some of those sets of bleachers that they had brought in.
And they've never been fixed.
So actually that night they actually contacted Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course and said, you guys got any bleachers you could lend to us?
Oh, wow.
And they actually got some moved, and they were actually able to put it up there. So it would be a great thing to see Mansfield Motorsports Speedway come back to life. So keep an eye out for that in the next 18 months, whatever it takes to get it going. But Kurt Conrad will be working on a story about that.
And Matt Tifft is a stock car racing driver. I just looked him up. He's only 28.
Yeah, he's a young guy who was on the rise in stock car racing, had some medical issues that have kind of DQ'd him from being able to race, but apparently has a lot of enthusiasm still for the sport. I'm not sure who his backers are at this point. Hopefully it's folks who are invested and have some pockets with some money in it, because none of this stuff's going to be cheap, but it would be great to see racing on Mansfield's north side cool. again. All right, that's enough for now. We have a lot of show coming up, so let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by outgoing Ashland Source reporter Mariah Thomas and her uber-smart father, Jim. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly, kind of a special edition of this particular show. We're now joined by outgoing. Actually, calling her outgoing at this point is probably too late because she's outgone. I think she's getting on the truck the moment we get done here today. Ashland Source reporter Mariah Thomas in her last official act.
Tears.
Very sad.
Of journalism, if you want to call it journalism.
Oh.
No, I mean this. I'm not talking about...
I'll be doing more journalism in Montana.
Oh, well, we'll be the judge of that. We'll get a subscription and we'll find out whether you're actually doing journalism or just hanging out with the fam, which is something you've taught me how to say over the last 2 years. But thankfully, in addition to Mariah, we have our uber-smart father, Jim, here with us. Thanks to both of you for being here today.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
And I know you're looking forward to how long a drive is it, Jim, from here back to the homestead in Montana?
Well, it's about the same to my house and Kalispell, where I've got to drop off Mariah. It's about 2,100 miles. And how many, do you do that in 1 day, 2 days? I'd rather do it in like 6 or 8 and just take my time, goof off. But,
yeah. I remember when I moved my son, my youngest son, who was living right outside Washington, D.C., and, of course, as our children will do, got a new job in Fort Collins, Colorado. And he and his wife wanted to move. And I said, okay, I'll be happy to help in any way I can. So they rented a truck, and I said, okay, I'm not loading the truck. I'm not going to do that. You get it loaded. So they got the truck loaded, and my wife and I flew in. And I told him, look, the only thing because I had not yet replaced a bad hip, or it just had it replaced, and it wasn't very good. I said, I don't want to drive a manual transmission truck. And I want it to have cruise control because I don't want to have to be mashing the gas all the way to Fort Collins. So we get there. I arrive. I get up in the truck at night. I look. There's no cruise control. It is an automatic transmission, so I give him credit for that. But I said, where's my cruise control? And he goes, I thought it had it. Don't all new trucks have it? I said, no, this one doesn't. So, yeah, we spent 3. And then the air conditioning broke as we approached the state of Kansas.
Or at least it wasn't Arizona.
Yeah. Well, Kansas in July is like just this side of hell. I don't know if you've ever driven through the entire length of the state of Kansas.
I have.
It's brutal.
Okay.
Yep.
It is 3 things. It is cornfields, it is scrawny-looking cows, and it's wind farms.
Yeah.
There are no cities, and the air conditioning breaks.
But you can see quite a distance because it's so flat.
Yeah, it's very flat, but it was like 850 degrees. I can't hear the radio because I'm driving with the windows down in this semi that I'm not a semi, but a big truck that I'm driving. I'm like, this is insane.
It's worse. It's worse in the winter.
Yeah. Well, then
the snow falls horizontally.
That's nice. Yeah, I don't want to see Kansas in winter then. But
what kind of truck do you have? Do you got a U-Haul that you're taking stuff back in?
Yeah.
Who's going to be doing all the driving?
Me.
Does the air
That's why you're here. That's why you're here.
Does the air conditioning work, and does it have cruise control?
Well, I'm expecting snow before we get to Kalispell, so the air conditioning isn't. There's a big storm coming across the northwest.
Wow.
And I just saw, and I often get fooled by things on the internet because I'm old and I don't really understand things. But didn't they just, like in the last couple of weeks, open some road?
Oh, yeah, the Beartooth Highway.
Yeah, it's like there's a picture of somebody standing by a wall of snow.
It normally gets about 23, 25 feet.
Which the only thing I've seen snow like that is when we had the blizzard in Ohio back in '78.
That's what made me move to Arizona.
Yeah,
I gotta check out the route. What's the destination point?
The destination point would be Whitefish, Montana.
Let's see.
It's just north of Kalispell, south of Glacier. She's about 20 miles from the west entrance of Glacier National Park.
I keep telling everyone they got to come visit. We got to get Carl out to Montana. That's what we got to do. I know
I've been
you guys
for 2 years.
Yeah, you guys have been trying to plot to buy a ranch or something. As far as I'm concerned,
Jim sent me this thing on Facebook. Said, "Hey, this ranch is available." And I thought, well, that's really nice looking. Then I looked at the price tag and I said, "What are you doing,
Carl? You're on vacation.
It's only
you
money.
Just go now.
Those winters are too dark and cold for Carl.
Yeah, well,
at this point in his life.
Yeah,
that's what they invented Florida for.
Yeah, that's why. I was just thinking to myself, I used to wonder why, when I was a kid, my grandparents went to Florida from Ohio during the winter, and I don't wonder anymore because I really can't stand Ohio winters. There's something about gray and dark and cold from November through April that just doesn't sit well with me.
Well, when I got ready to retire, I told my she's about 10 years younger than me, and she's a teacher too. And I told her if she wanted to move back up to Helena to be with her family, we could. I just didn't think she would. We had a golf course at the end of our block, and I could go bass fishing in shorts and a T-shirt during Christmas break.
How long had you been married when you made that mistake of saying we could?
I should have known better.
Yeah, I don't. Marcy and I have been married 40 years in June, and I never start a sentence with "we could." It's like, if I'm dead, you could.
Yeah, the "if you want to" thing is what don't.
No, that's the thing you learn after you stay married for a while. But Jim, when did you realize your worst fears had been realized, and that one of your children wanted to be a journalist? And how hard did you work to try to talk her out of it?
Well, she was kind of a toss-up between journalism and law school. She took the LSATs, did really well on them, so I kind of left it up to her. She never listens to me anyway.
That is so untrue. We just had a conversation about how much I care about his opinion.
Well, apparently, so you tricked him. I mean, when I started at OU, my plan was to get a journalism degree and go to law school because I like to talk, and nobody likes to hear themselves talk more than a lawyer. But after 4 years, the idea of taking one more college class in anything I found more revolting than winters in Ohio in my 60s. So
we're more alike than I thought, Carl.
So you obviously tricked your dad. You made him think you were going to go to law school, but in reality, you really wanted to come to Ashland, Ohio.
Well, do you know how expensive law school is these days? They're like $300,000. I was looking at all these schools, and it was like crazy debt. And I was like, you know what,
I'm going to interrupt for a second. The University of Montana has an excellent law school, and her uncle went there, and he's a Supreme Court justice in Montana.
Yeah, so there.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
It's not too late.
Well, I guess there is a lot of life still ahead of me, but it was one of those things where it was like, I got to the end of the line, and the minute that they put me in a newsroom as an intern, it was kind of a situation where I was like, oh, this is actually kind of something that I think I like. And then, I worked on my student paper, and that was its own experience, and it was, a lot of great stories to be told, and the next thing I knew, I was sticking in for a Report for America. I also had a situation where I really wanted to go to grad school in Northern Ireland, which is some really interesting lore. Yeah, have I never told you about this?
Northern Ireland, like Belfast,
like Belfast, yeah.
Is that the Protestant or the Catholic?
Yeah, which one were you going to be?
Probably the Catholic half.
Okay.
I mean, we're Catholic.
Okay. And you wanted to go to Belfast.
Well, you know what?
Do you know what happens in Belfast between Catholics and Protestants?
Yeah, well.
That didn't concern you at all?
Have
you heard of the Irish Republican Army?
You know, I have, actually. I was going to say, I took a course in college where we got to go and visit Northern Ireland. It was an international reporting class. So I got to do a story about domestic violence. And then we went and spent 2 weeks in the country. And I was really interested in potentially pursuing a master's degree out there. I thought that it was really cool. I was still maybe interested in law school at the time, and I was thinking, maybe I'll do some international law courses, get a master's in international human rights, and then, come back and do the law school thing. But, that didn't pan out, so I kind of threw in my application for Report for America on a whim, and then ended up, really clicking here. And
so it was either Belfast or Loudonville. I mean, that was kind of what you were looking at.
Well, tell the people what you're doing next.
What I'm doing next?
Yeah, where are you going? Where are you going to be working in North Dakota?
It won't be North Dakota.
Nebraska.
Isn't
Montana like Nebraska, but it's got hills?
No.
Mountains. Oh, mountains. Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to be headed back closer to home, which I think, I guess he can speak for himself, but I think they're happy about.
A lot of people seem happy about it. You're kind of great to have around.
Hayden's pretty happy about it because you've been hogging his space.
Yeah, I've been taking all his space on our
desk. Yeah, I take up a lot of space. Yeah. I stretch out.
No, I'm headed back to Montana. I'll be working at an independently owned news organization up in the Flathead Valley, and it's called the Flathead Beacon, and I will be reporting on education and state politics in Montana, which, are kind of the two things that I love, married all into one thing. So I'm super, super excited about it.
It seems like just yesterday. I remember your first day when you arrived in our newsroom. You were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to change the world with your first investigative TikTok. I remember looking at you and I said, "Oh, God bless her heart." I said, "Look at this, You'd never seen a rotary phone yet, but you were convinced you had the inside scoop on everything." And I said, "Look,
jokes."
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
dear.
she told me that she understood and basically had invented investigative journalism. And
I never said that.
That she found it on Reddit. And I'm like,
on Reddit? Yeah. I don't even have a Reddit.
Yeah. Then that first day I walked by and I looked down at her computer screen and she was doing a Google search for the definition of the word nutgrass. And I said, "Oh my, how times have changed." And,
oh man, the jokes.
Oh, I got more. I remember the day you said, "Hey, let's do some journalism," and I said, "Well, it's always good to try new things." But you're such an optimist. I will give you that. I remember the day you said, "Carl, every problem has a silver lining," and I said, "Yeah, and every silver lining has a dark cloud." I mean, that's just the way you look at things when you're 15 versus 60. I mean,
15.
And there was a day she finished the story and she looked at me and she goes, "This is the worst story I've ever written." And I looked at it. I said, "No, you've written worse."
Your positivity has been the perfect counter to Carl for the last 2 years.
He's sitting here. He's like, "What's my daughter been doing the last 2 years?"
And then one day you looked at me. You almost cried. You said, "Stop yelling at me." I said, "I'm not yelling. I'm saying things loudly that you don't want to hear."
So you know what? I was thinking about, I think that the moment that was really bonding for Carl and I was when Jimmy Buffett died. And Carl wrote like a whole obituary in our Slack channel. And I responded, and I was like out sobbing that day. I drank a margarita at Uniontown in Jimmy Buffett's honor. And I grew up listening to all of his music because of him. And then I came into the office and I was like, my dad also loves Jimmy Buffett. And I think from there it was kind of like
bringing the generations together.
Exactly. You did that. You taught me the Jimmy Buffett thing.
I did that with a lot of kids. I used to take kids down to Mexico to Rocky Point and for a marine biology seminar for 4 days, and they got a scuba dive out of it, and we did some intertidal zonation studies. But we listened to Jimmy Buffett the entire way down.
Yeah, I remember it's probably going to be the last big concert I go to because I really loathe crowds. I'm not a big fan. I don't like people in general, but I definitely don't like crowds. I like dogs. I don't like people. But my son, who lived at that time, was still living in Fort Collins, and he goes, "Hey, do you want to go to a Jimmy Buffett concert at Red Rocks?" And I think this was 2020, 2021. The COVID thing was still going on because there was concerns about masks and whether you had to get a shot to get into the show, and you had to show your ID that you'd actually been inoculated. But yeah, Jimmy Buffett at Red Rocks in the summer. I mean, it was weird because that was on a Wednesday.
Great. That was not too long before he died, right?
Yeah, it was a couple of years. I mean, 2 or 3 years. But he knew then at that show that he had cancer and was not doing well. But he hadn't announced it, hadn't let on yet. But yeah, it was a great show. This is what your kids do to you, Jim. I go to Fort Collins and I go see Jimmy Buffett, have a great time. It's on a Wednesday. And my oldest son, who's living in Columbus, says, "Hey, do you want to go down to Cincinnati this weekend to see Dead and Company?" Well, I'm not a big jam band fan, I got to admit. But I said, you know what? Lucas doesn't always invite me to a lot of things. So I said, yeah, I'll go. So I see Jimmy Buffett on a Wednesday. We fly home on Thursday. On Saturday morning, I drive down to Columbus. We get him. We go down to Cincinnati. Now, Jimmy Buffett played for an hour and a half and did like 24 songs. Dead and Company played for 2 hours, and they did like 6 songs. And like the songs that I really remember, like from the Grateful Dead, like
You
Truckin'.
remember something from a Dead concert?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of. But the thing I remember
called a
most
flashback,
is the thing I remember most is like the song "Truckin'." They didn't even do it. And I asked my son, we're leaving. I said, they didn't. The one song I really associate with Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, and they didn't do it. He goes, well, they don't do all their songs at all their shows. They
couldn't.
I'm like, well,
they just did all like the Dark Star jammy stuff,
well,
like
and then he's
20-minute guitar solos.
And the cool part was we went to, and if you've been, Mariah, have you been to a Dead and Company show? Jim, have you been to?
I've seen Grateful Dead several times.
Yeah, the best part of the concert is before the show, when you're walking around the village of people who travel with the band, and they sell stuff. And we're walking by, and there's a guy sitting behind his Ford 100 pickup truck, and he's got a hot plate. And he's making grilled cheese sandwiches on this hot plate, and he's selling them for like $1. And
living the dream.
And Lucas wanted to buy one. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I could eat a grilled cheese. I said, off that? From him? No, we're not doing that, so... And if it's something so gross that I wouldn't eat it, I would eat it. Yeah, no. But then there are also people selling like shots and other assorted
shots.
Yeah, well, no, not. I probably could, yeah. And I also saw people selling loose joints, which I thought was kind of a nice thing. I always like to appreciate entrepreneurs, but these people literally travel with the band.
We always did BYO.
Okay.
Bring your own.
Well, it was a long drive, so. Yeah. All right, Jim, which is worse, hauling all of Mariah's stuff to Ohio and helping her move in, or now you got to haul it all back home? Which is worse?
All right, did it grow?
Well, so far, moving out here was the worst because the U-Haul that I had broke down about 30 miles outside of Bozeman, and the bearing went out in one of the trailer wheels, and it took me 3.5. We were racing a storm, trying to stay out in front of a storm coming in off the East Coast. So they were following me, and Dad told them just go ahead. We're heading for Rapid City. And so they put me back, 3.5 hours before the tow truck showed up. Then they told me I had to transfer everything. It was 90 degrees in Bozeman that day. And Bozeman at, 6,000 feet, the sun's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Then I had my Pyrenees with me. And then by the time I got to Billings, the storm had caught up with me, and it was hail and thunderstorms, and I was parking under overpasses and stuff to stay out of the hail. And it followed me all the way to Omaha.
And at what point did you say to yourself, Mariah, damn.
You just got to buy new stuff.
At what you're asking a singular kind of thing.
Yeah.
It probably happened several times.
can't wait. You know what? This is so funny because when I got this job, I remember I got off of this interview and I tell this story. I told this story a couple of times to like college mentors and stuff, but he's always kind of like had this innate sense of like what's going to be good for my sister and I, right? And so when I was going to college and going to undergrad, I really wanted to go to like, you know, a big school and like get out of state. And I was looking at Georgetown and I was looking at UC Berkeley and it was going to make me go into a lot of debt. And then the university and I was just looking at some big schools and I
no state, no like, you know, technical schools or, you know, nothing.
You think I should go to? I don't know how to use tools.
My high school guidance counselor suggested I become a power lineman, so that's that's kind of the extent.
No, not me.
And actually, he was right. Looking back, I could be retired by now. But,
it was so I was looking around, and the University of Montana offered me a pretty big scholarship, which was really kind of them. And I remember we went to this big scholarship interview day, and at that interview day, I was still dead set on like I'm gonna go out of state. And then, you know, it went really well, and he kind of looked at me at the end of that day and he goes, "You're going to end up here for the next 4 years." And sure enough, he was right. And then I remember getting to the end of college and I was interviewing for jobs. I had, you know, a couple of things that were kind of in the mix and this was one of them. And I got off of the job interview and I remember my job interview went really long. It was not supposed to go as long as it did. But as we all well know at this point, I can never shut my mouth.
No.
And so I remember calling him once I got off of that interview and I was like, yeah, I think it went really well. I'm not sure. And he goes, "I got a feeling I'm going to be moving you to Ohio." Sure enough, he was moving me to Ohio about a month and a half later.
So what did you know about Ohio? And this is open for both of you. What did you know about Ohio before you actually arrived on our shores?
Our shores.
One of my best friends when I was teaching in Scottsdale was from Dayton, the Dayton area. His dad worked at the Air Force Base down there. Mm-hmm. And we'd come out here one winter. I'd gotten divorced and he would moved in with me, and we decided one Christmas we were going to drive out and visit our families in Illinois. I'm from Carrollton, Illinois, and down by Dayton where he was from. So we packed the dogs up and headed out and got to Albuquerque, and we were having a great old time. We started heading north out of Albuquerque to Raton Pass, and that's where we decided to camp our first night. And as it turns out, there's a big snowstorm. We got covered with snow. And then in the morning, we heard this roaring noise, and it was a train. We had camped maybe 20 feet from a railroad track. Then we camped in Kansas the next night, and we were attacked by turkeys in the morning. And we were just sleeping outside without tents. But we got over to Dayton, and it was pretty cool. We visited some things.
Did you go to the Air Force Space Museum?
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, that's a cool spot.
Yeah, and got to meet his parents and everything. But coming across southern Ohio, I didn't realize things were that close to Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went down and visited some parks around there. And
well, there's a lot of people in Ohio who think the Mason-Dixon line runs through Akron, Canton. So
it doesn't surprise me.
Mariah, what did you know about Ohio before coming here?
And what do you know now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What have you learned?
I knew next to nothing. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I literally got
Did
offered...
you know a buckeye was a poison nut?
I didn't know what a buckeye was.
Well,
okay.
Tell the story about when we got high.
Oh, yeah. Well, we went to... That's a really interesting way to put it.
Tell
we
that
went
story.
We went to Mount Gee's.
Oh, yeah.
He came out last March, and I took him out to Mount Gee's, and it's the highest point in the county, and so we were joking about he was joking about getting high in Ohio. But no. Yeah, there was
a Rocky Mountain High. It's
in Ohio High.
Hilly High.
Hilly High.
John Denver didn't do a song about that.
He did not.
Hilly High.
West Virginia, Mountain Mama.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like I have learned a lot. I really didn't know what to expect. He was like, it's a lot of corn. There's a lot of corn, a lot of soybeans, which is definitely true. But I have been, very pleasantly surprised at some of the, like natural beauty in the state. I loved going down to Mohican State Park. That's a beautiful area. I got up to Cuyahoga Valley National Park, which was also stunning. Like the Ledges hike, I feel like all of the glacial, like old glacial rock, like that's very cool. And like as somebody who used to be a very big science-y like nerd, like I was the Dynamic Planet state champion in science Olympiads in Montana one year.
Wait, that was in addition to your multiple spelling bee victories?
It was, let me tell you.
Which I've heard about for 2 years.
Yes, it was. But yeah, so that was really cool to like get to see that. And then
CAT. C-A-T. CAT.
And then I actually just recently got down to Hocking Hills with a friend for the first time, and oh my gosh, that I don't know why that's not a national park. That was stunning down there. So been very pleasantly surprised at that. I have learned what a buckeye is. I've tried them. They're very good.
No, then you've eaten chocolate buckeyes.
The chocolate buckeyes, not the poison nut version.
Yeah, don't go around telling people you've tried buckeyes and they're delicious, because now you're encouraging people to eat poison nuts.
Sorry.
You've learned a lot about the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I have learned. Zach has taught me a lot about the Cleveland Cavaliers. I also have learned a lot about the Browns and how not great they are as a team. I learned a lot about fantasy football.
Yeah.
You know, and you learn not to take the boss's.
Actually, I learned to do exactly that.
Yeah, you got a gift out of it.
I got Baker Mayfield helped my team out all season long.
Yeah, we call those career-limiting maneuvers. But, all right. One of the things I wanted to do, and I haven't written this down, but I'm going to come up with 3 or 4, maybe 5, trivia questions about Ohio. And I want to see. I mean, they're all No. This is on you. Your dad probably knows these things. I want to test your knowledge, and I'm doing this off the top of my head. These guys can attest.
Dear.
They've seen my roughed out script. They have no idea where this was coming from. So let's see what you've learned about Ohio history while you're here. Are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
Okay. Question 1. This even predates the state of Ohio. First college in the Northwest Territory. 1804 is when it was founded.
Is it your alma mater?
Ohio University. Yes.
Wow. Ding.
Yes. We were here way before that farmers college in Columbus that just happens to have a better football team. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, you were talking about going on foreign trips in your college to Belfast. Yeah, we went to Nelsonville. I mean, that's kind of was our foreign trip. All right.
Kent State's better.
So you kind of got Kent Reed, Kent Wright, Kent State. That's what we know about that. All right, let's see. Trivia question number 2. The first American to orbit the Earth, was it orbit? Yes, it was. First man to orbit the Earth is from Ohio. Who was he? You, Jim, stop.
John Glenn.
Also a former U.S. Senator.
Yeah, we went to the museum at the bottom of the Capitol.
All right.
Traveled around that the last time I was here.
All right, well, then, you know what? Since your dad helped you with that one, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and you can't give her the answer.
Oh, dear.
What town did John Glenn grow up in?
I don't know that one.
Well, you should. It was New Concord, where I went to high school.
Oh, where you were in the Hall of Fame now.
Yes, I'm in the Alumni Hall of Fame.
Were you 2 guys friends?
No, he went there a couple of years. You know what?
A couple?
Yeah, he did come to my graduation.
He was 95 when he died 10 years ago.
He was our high school graduation speaker. It was the first time he'd ever spoken. When he went there, it was New Concord High School. Obviously, years later, became John Glenn, but it's the first time he'd ever came back to speak. We didn't know, he was getting ready to run for president, which is why he wanted to do such a thing. But yeah. All right, so you're kind of 1 for 2, because I'm not giving you that one because your dad gave you that one. So
thanks for the help. He's a really good person to watch Jeopardy with. Yeah, I'll tell you that much for free.
All right, question number 3. Sticking on space, the first man to walk on the moon.
Neil Armstrong.
Where's he from? Ohio. Well, yeah, we know Ohio. That would be sticking with the theme. What's the name of the town?
I don't know where Neil Armstrong is from, but there's sure a lot of space people from Ohio, apparently.
This probably would have come up when you were mispronouncing all the Ohio cities in the video that you and Grace did.
Oh, man, I didn't know how to pronounce any of them.
Yeah, it was, Neil Armstrong was from Wapakoneta.
Wapakoneta?
Wapakoneta. All right, so we're kind of 1 for Is
Three.
it 1
1
for
for
3?
three.
1 for 3.
Yeah.
All right, well, come up with something easier. Off the top of my head, something easier. The only 2-time Heisman Trophy winner played football at Ohio State. What was his name? Or what is his name? Because he's still alive.
You can't go get Larry.
Yeah, where's Larry when I need him? 2-time high. What is?
Where he's been for the last 2 years. In the newsroom. All right.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Heisman Trophy
No,
winner.
I-
Yeah, Larry has won. Larry's won 2 Heisman.
Come on. The only 2 in the history
I
of
don't know.
college
The only
football.
thing I'm thinking about is Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow.
He's like the only one I know.
How many football players can you name?
Travis
Maybe
Kelsey.
that's easier.
I
Yeah,
thought.
you should have given her something from the
They're the-
Kelsey.
Oh
They're
yeah,
the good
Travis
ones.
Kelsey's from Ohio.
Yeah, he's never. Who I'll give you a hint. He's never dated Taylor Swift.
Well, then that rules out most of the football players that I know.
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you, it was Archie Griffin.
I would never have gotten that.
All right, 1 for 4.
I didn't know that was a
Questions
person.
stink, bro.
All right. I'm going to give you one, the non-sports, but this can be the last one. This is your chance to actually score 40%. And with the exception of your dad's physics classes, 40% is a passing grade in this particular class. Because I don't think he was letting kids skate on at 40%. Here you go. The general, U.S. Civil War general, who marched from Atlanta to Savannah, is from Ohio. What was his name?
I know. I should know.
Did you drive through Lancaster on your way to Hocking Hills?
Probably.
That's pretty close to where he was from.
Isn't it Sherman?
Ding, 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 ding,
Got
ding, ding, ding.
it.
William Tecumseh Sherman.
That's what
You
I
got it right.
I was thinking Tecumseh.
Yeah.
Because it was a weird name.
Yeah, having lived in Georgia for 9 years, what you don't do is go to Atlanta and ask people to locate the Sherman Monument for you, because that's still very painful to those people.
There's a story behind this, too,
Yep.
about that.
Go ahead.
We took a visit out to some friends of my wife's in Monroe, Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thought, well, what the heck, we're going to go up the Natchez Trace, check out some Civil War battle sites. We visited Vicksburg, and Mariah bought herself a little Union cap.
But probably the only one on the shelf in Vicksburg.
She had some guy start giving her a bunch of garbage about that, and Mariah didn't realize he was giving her garbage. He said, "Hey, nice hat." Thanks. Thank you.
Well,
For context, I think I was about 10 at the time.
adorable.
So I really had no idea. I
Yeah.
was just very excited about my hat.
Dad, he really likes my hat. You're going,
People here are nice. Southern hospitality.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. The last thing I want to get into, the first night that I met Jim, we were at the Fox, and we were trying a tradition at the Fox where you have is it a tack and a dollar bill, and you hit your hand, and it tacks this dollar bill into the ceiling. And everybody was saying, well, yeah, this will work. And everybody was trying to do it. And I saw Jim standing there watching people. And I'd had a couple of sodas or so at that point. And I walked over and I said, I don't see you participating in this. And you looked at me and said, well, it won't work. I said, and my stupor, I go, how do you know it won't work?
What are you, a physics teacher or something?
And he looked at me and he goes, physics?
Pretty simple answer.
Yeah.
Carl.
I mean, I thought, I like this guy.
I started out in physics as my major
Yeah.
at Eastern Illinois University, and then after my sophomore year and an attempt at differential equations, I decided I think I want to be a biologist now.
Yeah, but I thought that was just, I loved that answer. It was succinct. It was perfect. And I said, this guy and I are going to get along just fine. But,
And I told you so.
Yep. But you know what? Just in the interest of time, and you guys got a long drive ahead, we're going to leave it there. Now, Mariah, all jokes aside, it's been a pleasure to work with you these last 2 years. There are a lot of young journalists coming out of college these days, and you were certainly one of them. I even wrote rim shot into the script, but no one
is there.
No one picked up on that. So, but listen, feel free now, after 2 years of OJT, with one of the most irascible, mean-spirited, sarcastic people you'll ever work with, go forth and prosper, and stop writing passive voice leads. That's all I'm going to say about that. Are we good on that? What's a passive voice lead?
Uses am, is, are, was, were.
And it backs into the lead. Yeah. Knowing his arm was about to fall off, comma, Jim ran away.
No dependent clauses.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for finally getting that. It only took 2 years, so thank you for that.
Take that knowledge to North Dakota.
Yes, if I have taught you nothing else.
Exactly.
I remember the first time Mariah came over and I was going to edit one of her stories, and she was going to watch me edit it, and all I could hear behind me was Oh.
Does she have something stuck in her throat?
I think so. I think it was a chicken bone. But, but no.
To someone that studied science, a dependent clause is something like Santa Claus is single now?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I had a similar response from her, so that's very good. No, it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys were able to come in and do this before you got on the road. You've been a friend of the show. Been on a few times, so I'm glad to have you here. But, folks, let's take another quick break. Mariah, any last words before you exit and leave the state of Ohio behind?
I'll
so
miss
long,
y'all.
suckers.
That is not what I just said.
No. You go.
See you, Luke.
See y'all, son. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna miss it here.
We're gonna miss you.
Thank you guys for taking me in. I know they've appreciated it too.
You've always got a home here.
Yeah, it's nice you had you guys taking care of her instead of us. And Carl was so much like me that, I'm sure she felt right at home.
She's one of the smart ones, so we had to.
Yeah. I was very concerned about the mouse, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
What about the skunk?
Yeah, it did.
And you guys will still probably be driving tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. when this episode.
Yeah, you can flip
it on. We will.
It'll take us
Be one of the first listeners.
22 hours probably to get back.
Oh, man.
Safe travels.
All right, folks, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Bob Ball, the Chief Investigator for the Richland County Coroner's Office. So stay with us.
We're going to go have some floor time now.
Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. We're now joined by Bob Ball, the Chief Investigator for the Richland County Coroner's Office. Bob, thanks for taking time with us today, and thanks for coming in so damn early.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we're going to talk about the retrospective fatality analysis in a couple of minutes, but I did want to start by talking a little bit about the Richland County Coroner's Office and your role as the Chief Investigator. How long have you been with the Coroner's Office? What's your future look like? Neither one of us is getting any younger, so is the end in sight, or what? How long are you going to keep doing this?
I've been there since January of 2005, which I just finishing up my 20th year. I started out with Dr. Stu Rickman, who was the county coroner elected in 2004. The process that we go through is the training that we have to go through to understand. I don't think most people understand our role as the county coroner. All we do is we look at cause and manner of death, which is extensive. But I can see my future. I don't see anything within the next 2 or 3 years. There's a lot going on. It's a lot to train people. And we have a good coroner. Dr. Burwell is our coroner now. And I'll stay with him as long as he's there, and then we'll see where we go from there. I'm like you, Carl. Time's flying.
It does. It is, and it does. But now, you and Tom Stortz. Tom, I think, is an investigator. You've only got two, right?
Correct.
You and Tom.
Correct.
So one of you guys is on call 24/7.
Right.
How do you work that out? I mean, it's like, hey, I'll work this weekend, you work tomorrow. How do you guys schedule that stuff out?
I wish it was that easy.
It's just like you and Larry.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
We are on a 12-hour schedule, and then the weekend we split. When we go in on night calls, we go from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then we pick up the weekends. And then I was on the call this weekend, so we go in at 5 a.m. Now I'm on call today and through the rest of the week, and then when Friday comes, I'm off for the weekend. So we do it every other weekend. It's a pretty steady schedule. We flop back and forth to cover each other because Tom's busy and we're all busy, and but it works right now. Cases are starting to build more and more and more every year. Yeah. So the restrictions, the laws are changing. So Eventually, they'll probably have to be a third spot. There's no way we can keep up with this because we do between 400 and 500 cases a year.
And a lot of those cases do go down to Montgomery County, down in Dayton, for autopsy. Do you guys transport, or is that a separate entity that actually transports bodies down to Dayton? How does that work?
We hired a transport company, and he takes the bodies to Montgomery County for the autopsies, and then he stays with that body and brings it back, so we can distribute that body to for the family to the funeral homes and then get their process going.
I don't know if a lot of people realize, but there are a few counties that actually do their own autopsy. I think like Montgomery County, obviously. I think Franklin County,
That's
maybe
correct.
Cuyahoga.
That's correct.
But everybody else is using one of these larger cities because it's such a science that it wouldn't make sense to have a smaller county have a coroner who's doing that kind of work because it's so specialized.
Well, you're talking about technical. You're talking about the forensic portion of it, which is the toxicology. And you're talking about hiring forensic pathologists at a higher rate of salary, plus your lab, plus your morgue, plus your people to work the morgue. You got morgue attendants. It's a whole separate operation. We looked at it in 2005. Dr. Rickman did, and at that point, it was about almost $4 million.
Jeez.
And I'm sure that Richland County was not going to throw that out. So it's cheaper for us to do it this way.
Right. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but in Ohio, the county coroner is the lead investigator of the death scene, even above law enforcement officers and a county prosecutor. And I realized this the night I was working in Springfield at the New Sun down in Clark County, and I was standing outside a house, and a guy had come home intoxicated to his estranged wife. He killed his wife. He killed 3 of his 4 kids. Thought he had killed all 4, but fortunately didn't succeed. Then he called 911 and had the dispatcher listen as he killed himself. And by the time I got there were a lot of police there. Obviously, there's firefighters there. An assistant county prosecutor was there. And the coroner pulled up out front. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. And the coroner himself, Dirk Wood, I think was his name. Anyway, he walked up, and the first thing he did was order everybody out of the house. And I could hear him, because I'm out on the sidewalk, and I hear him yelling, "Get the hell out of my crime scene." So here comes the prosecutor, here come the cops, and he goes, "I'll let you know when you can come back in." So I don't think people understand that when there's a death like that or multiple deaths, and the coroner is there or you're there, that's the person that's actually in charge of the death scene.
When that death occurs under the Ohio Revised Code, the coroner, it's under our jurisdiction. And you have to teach, especially young police officers, what's available and what's not, what's their scene and what's our scene. We have a great rapport with our law enforcement officers. A lot of new ones coming in, so we have to work with them and train them. Don't touch this, don't touch that, and try to work with them to say, look, when we piece this all together for the autopsy, we have to have documentation to show that forensic pathologist, this is what happened. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, and it's missing, I've had guns in cases where the police officer come in, secure the gun, and then take it and lock it in the trunk of their car. And so you got to kind of explain that and bring it back to them, because they'll tell you, well, Bob, we were securing the scene, we were making it safe. Well, my comment to them is always, and I know this is probably, it's a learning experience when I say, dead men do not shoot somebody.
You know what? I've been doing this a long time, and I think that's accurate. I've never seen a dead man shoot somebody. But
Carl, if they do, I retire.
And you know what? That'll be the last story I write, so I think I'll go out with you. Now, along those lines, the coroner's office has a kind of an interesting relationship with law enforcement. Under state law, you guys are independent of law enforcement, but you're often working side by side at a death scene. How difficult can that be sometimes in terms of maintaining your own independence from what law enforcement officers may be doing or wanting you to do at a scene?
My background was law enforcement, so I understand their role when they come in and what they think they're responsible for. And as I go along, I make sure they understand this is how we have to do it. This is why we have to do this. And they are really, the law enforcement we have here has accommodated to that. every once in a while they'll kind of get ahead of the game, but they've learned to step back on that game. They don't understand the coroner's jurisdiction and what the coroner's responsibility is and what can happen if they upend that. But most of the older police officers, the detectives, they do, and they usually come in, because I tell them right up front when they call me, don't touch anything. Don't mess with anything. We'll get it when we get there. Because in some of that, we have jurisdiction where the body is and what surrounds the body. And so we have to be careful with that, because if it gets outside of that, then a search warrant needs to take place. So it's kind of hand in hand with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen, I'm trying to remember exactly, this was in Guernsey County, so it must have been 150 years ago. But there was a death that I was covering the story, and the police chief and the prosecutor really wanted it to be called a homicide, and I'm trying to remember why. But the coroner's office looked at it and said, no, I don't think it's a homicide. It looks more like a suicide. And the prosecutor's like, no, it's a homicide. And the coroner said, no, I'm ruling it a suicide. And there was a big riff. You ever experience anything like that where one side wants it to be something and you're saying, no, science says it's this?
I had a case several years ago. In fact, it was down here on Walnut Street, where a gentleman was a mental health issue. He had MRDD, had some mental health issues, and lived in one of the housing units. We got a call one day from one of the locals that said, we have a suicide. We have a suicide here. And so I said, well, don't touch anything till I get there. So we get there, and they're showing me a bullet hole in his chin, or what they believed was a bullet hole. Now, this person had been laying there for several days. I mean, several days. So it was very difficult with some of the decomposition and the of the scene with him. So when I got there, I could see the piece of whatever was on his chin, but my first comment was, where's the gun? And nobody could find a gun. And I kept saying, well, we're pretty sure it's a suicide. We've been here before, and I kept looking, and I just happened to look, and there was blood spatter marks all over the walls. And I'm like, this isn't right. This is not where he was laying at, because he was in bed. Long short of the story, it ended up being a homicide. It was a person that had beat him with dumbbells. I don't know if you remember that case or not.
I do now, yes.
Yeah, they beat him severely with that, and it was very difficult to see. But once we got into it, we started cleaning him up a little bit. We took him and had him x-rayed. We started seeing all this. So the first conclusion they come to, that's why we tell them, leave the scene alone, because we could have been in a real pickle. And then we found a knife where he had stabbed him. And my comment to the guys, because they were older detectives, was really to have a little camaraderie with them, because we knew each other for a long time. And I said, where's the gun?
Yeah, that's the other thing dead men don't do when they commit suicide. Correct. is get rid of the gun. It's
Correct.
Usually got to be laying around somewhere. Yeah, and I remember, and I'm not going to mention their names simply because it's been too long, but we had a case where a woman and her boyfriend smothered the woman's baby with a pillow because it was apparently crying and bothering the boyfriend. And then to try to cover it up, they laid the baby on a floor heating grate.
Correct.
And let it burn through the bone.
Right.
And then they called 911. And when firefighters were the first to get there, they said, well, the baby was sleeping and it rolled over on this floor grate. And, of course, firefighters were like, I don't know if it's going to burn all the way to the bone. But when they did the autopsy, I don't remember whether it might have been done in Lucas County at that time.
It was done in Hamilton County.
Okay.
I remember the case, yeah.
And the autopsy came back and said, yeah, the baby had a crushed larynx.
Correct.
So, yeah, it was not a baby rollover and die by heating grate.
No.
But I remember that case because the mother took a plea right before her trial. I was sitting in the courtroom. She took a plea, but she had changed her story so many times, and she testified against her boyfriend, and he was actually acquitted. And I remember thinking, this is bizarre.
One of the older coroners that I worked with always told me, when you get the call, you work it from a homicide until it's not. And that's been my mindset ever since I've been there. So I keep telling the kids, I call them kids, I keep telling them, look, guys, the forensic will show you if we let it. If you overlook it, we may lose, and we have an obligation. My boss, Dr. Burwell, is very adamant. We have an obligation to these county residents to try to get the right answers.
Right. Now, you've been doing this a long time, 20 years, obviously, in the coroner's office. A lot of death scenes. I've been around you at a lot of death scenes, but you're actually inside or seeing the bodies, seeing what happens. How do you handle that, and does it ever get any easier?
First, my faith. That's the first thing. I do debriefing. I've learned that debriefing with a psychologist helps tremendously. I try not to take my work home. Unfortunately, sometimes it does happen. I have a very understanding wife who lets me know you need to go see somebody, but I've learned to adjust it. It's like you, Carl. You've been around the world a long time. You've seen it, and you learn to adapt to it. Do you ever get used to it? No, but you've learned to adapt to it and adjust to it. But my faith is a lot of it. And then, like I said, I have a great psychologist who works me over, and then I take a lot of vacations. I'm just joking when I say that.
Did you always do the debriefing with the psychologist? Was it part of the job, or is that something that came along later?
It came along later. I had a baby case that probably the first year and a half I was there, and I worked me over. I couldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days. And then I had a local person that I'd worked for many years that I had to work his case. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I knew him very well, been friends, grew up with his family and him, and that one took me. So I realized I needed that help.
Yeah, I realized, and I mean, I don't really rush out and do this kind of stuff anymore, but back in the day when I had the handheld scanner and was running on calls and things like that, most journalists, we psychoanalyze each other in the bar after work. That's usually where a lot of our psychoanalysis occurs over time. Or at least that's how it used to be. We don't really do that much anymore, but I completely understand what you're talking about. You got to have somebody to talk to about this stuff. But
Ron Simon used to psychoanalyze me. I'm joking when I say
Now, Ron Simon, Cy would call me up, and for those of you who are old enough to remember the late, great Ron Simon, I was living over on Benham Avenue, hadn't been in Mansfield very long, and he'd call me up and say, "Hey, I got a six-pack. You want some?" I'd say, "Yes, Cy, come on over." And he'd show up about 20 minutes later, and he'd have 4 beers. I said, "Cy, I thought you had a six-pack." He goes, "Well, I did when I started."
That sounds like
still the best storyteller I've encountered in the business, the great Ron Simon at the Mansfield News Journal. Now, one of the things we wanted to talk about today, Bob, is something that you told me about a few months ago, retrospective fatality analysis. Now, from what I understand, RFA is how I'll refer to it because it's a lot of vowels if I have to say the whole thing over and over again. It builds upon the foundation of something called the psychological autopsy, which was a death review process developed by Dr. Ed Schneidman back in 1958 when he was trying to explain what they called ambiguous deaths for the LA County Coroner's Office. Explain to us what RFA is and when did your office begin to actually use it and deploy it and employ it?
I was at a training session back in December in Franklin County, Ohio. Dr. Burwell and I were. And they brought in Austin from the Ohio Suicide Coalition within the state, and he brought in RFA people to talk to us about there's more to this than just it's a suicide, it's a self-inflicted gunshot wound, or it's a suicide loss. There's more to it than that. Just to say that and walk away from it. And one thing I really was hard to do was to sit down with the family and talk to them and listen to why. We didn't see the signs. We didn't see the triggers. We don't know why. Why did this happen? Why did this person who had been successful do this? I mean, they had everything going for them. And what the RFA has completed and done is it's given us the opportunity in the training. I'm bringing the training here in June the 17th and 18th, to train people in the healthcare field, within the mental health, counselors, and some other investigators, in other counties, to go in and interview these families. I mean, it's just not the families. It just reaches out. I mean, and to try to get triggers of maybe something they saw, or is there something that maybe they heard that they could react to? Is it going to go down the line and affect some of the genetics? Is one of their other family members suffering from depression? And our depression ratio right now with anxiety and depression are up. They're going up and up and up. And some of that is from drug addiction, the anxiety and mental health. Some of those I have in my heart felt that it just wasn't an overdose, it was suicide. Right. Because they're not dealing with the addiction process of it, the anxiety process of it. So this is going to give us an opportunity to go in and work with the families to try to get answers for them, or more answers for them. And then included in that is, because this is a national organization, we supply them the data so that we're able to go in with that data and say, this is the areas that we probably need to look at a little closer. So that's kind of where the RFA came in with me. It gives me a little more clarity rather than just run in the door and say, yep, that's what happened. Carl, there's more to this. We owe that family more.
Yeah, so this is now going far beyond just cause and manner of death.
Correct.
There were, I think, on average, maybe 48,000 suicides in the United States every year. I was looking at some data from the Richland County Suicide Prevention Coalition. At least through December 20th of last year, we had, I think, 20 suicides just in Richland County. And those are ones that are officially classified as suicide. There may be some drug overdoses that you would think, well, there's actually somebody's trying to kill themselves or don't care if they die. So when you're doing these interviews, is the ultimate goal not only to help the family, but also help build data, statistics that may help in preventing suicides down the road?
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit about that process.
What we want to do is we want to be able to supply through this RFA. As you saw, there's two offices with them. One's in Colorado, and then one is in South Dakota. I don't know if you noticed that, but what we do is we supply that data and our material to the RFA coordinators. They're basically psychologists who go in and they do an analyzation of all our data that we put together. And for instance, they said, well, in Mansfield, Ohio, or Richland County, Ohio, these seem to be the triggers. It could be weather, it could be drugs and alcohol, it could be, and they're able to show us through our associations that there's an area here that needs to be looked at, and looked at more so.
Weather. Now, that's something I hadn't thought about. I get depressed during the winter, and the older I get, the more depressed I get. I used to wonder why my grandparents went south during the winter. I don't wonder anymore, because when it's dark from November through April, I don't like any of that. But
I took a statistic of 2020 of our suicide, because I'm thinking pandemic, jumped up, depression. And I thought maybe it was higher. No, it wasn't higher. It kicked up in 21 and 22. So it was after that pandemic came into play.
So once we started talking to each other again, that's kind of yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, social media was flying and everything else,
No, when obviously starting the RFA process after you went to the event with Dr. Burwell in December, how different does it make your job when you're sitting down with a family to talk about the suicide, to try to gain information? How much does it help the families now that you've kind of taken this different process?
I'm going to illustrate something to you that I did before I went through this training. When I sit down with the families before, it was pretty cut and dry. This is what happened. This is what we found. This is how this happened. I'm sorry, and left. And I mean, maybe not in that order, but right. I'm very compassionate with people, especially when they lose a loved one. And this helped me to go in and sit down and say, we've had a case here within the last 4 months, where we had to sit down with the family. I had the law enforcement come in with their investigation, our investigation, and we laid that out specifically so they could see that and that they understood this is what happened. Now, the cause of it, we need to go back in, give that little time to heal, and go back in, and then really dip into it. One thing I've seen, and this is troubling to me, just me. I'm not an expert, but when we find people that are going through anxiety, mental health issues, the first thing that happens, they see a professional. They put them on medication. They can't sleep, so they put them on medication. And most of the people, when I pull their medical records, I see that, and I'm like, is there a trigger there? Is there something there that they're not resolving the problem in my book.
Now, well, there's a reason why a lot of those pharmaceuticals are like, hey, suicidal thoughts, and I'm not trying to disparage any
Me neither.
medication. I know you're not either. But yeah, it's always a risk when you're trying something, when someone with mental health issues or is going through something, is trying something new. You have to be careful about that.
Right. So that's what I see. So that's what I'm trying to bring to the forefront in Richland County and other counties, because the people that are coming are not just from Richland County. They're from other areas and agencies that want to do this training, get certified in this to step forward. Hopefully we can do something to say, yes, this is a problem here. What do we need to do to fix this? And we can always take it to the psychologist or the, I'm just going another step, Carl.
Right. When you look at suicides, what, just from your experience, is there one or two or maybe three biggest triggers that cause people to make that kind of final decision?
Usually what I see is anxiety, mental health, and addictions, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs. That's what I've seen in most cases. I've never seen females up until the last probably 4 years that they normally would do pills, carbon monoxide, and now they're going to a little more aggressive, if you know what I'm saying,
right.
Aggressive.
Really? Just in the last few years?
About the last 3 or 4 years,
really?
Yeah.
What, do you guys have any reasoning behind that, or is it
that's where we want to go. We want to find out, because it's become violent.
Yeah.
And that was troubling. And in fact, that's what kind of triggered me to say, why? Why is this happening?
Right. So this training is going to be over 2 days? Is
2 days.
2 days of training, or is it 1 day, twice that you're offering, or how's it going to work?
It's 2 days. You got to go through a full 16-hour course to be certified through the RFA. And it will be here in Richland County. Graciously, Catalyst has stepped up to help us with this program, not throwing any other agency, but Laura Montgomery, who's the CEO of Catalyst, has said, I hear what you're saying. We see this in our agency, and a lot of their agency people are going. There'll be some other agencies and to come in. It's full 2 days, and these people are coming in from South Dakota, and then one lady is from Indiana, who sat under I sit under their teaching.
All right. Anything else kind of going on in the world of the coroner's office these days that people ought to know about? Any changes? Any new things happening?
It's all new. every day's new.
Yeah, when you walked in the door this morning, I said, "What's new and exciting?" And you said everything.
Everything is. I mean, it's a different world. I mean, it never is the same. Even though some of the cases fall into the same plateau, it's never the same.
I thought it was interesting. Well, not interesting. It was sad. But a couple of years ago, when the city of Mansfield had, 12 gun-related homicides in 1 year. But whenever I wrote that story, I also had to include the fact that there was a homicide at one of the two prisons, whether it was Ricky or Mancy, I don't remember. So the police department investigated 12, but the coroner's office investigated 13, because you guys also have to handle deaths out at the state prisons.
All the jails. Any jail, Richland County, Ricky, Mancy, and yes, I remember that because I'm getting ready to testify in, I think it's July in that case. You're right. And those cases take time. They take a lot of time. Those 12 for the city of Mansfield were multiple gunshots. And you got to make sure that you don't miss anything.
Yeah. Now, you've also, guys, have also a couple, 3 times over the last few years, and the one I'm thinking about most recently was out at North Lake Park, working with this college. Is it Mercyhurst?
Mercyhurst, yeah.
Mercyhurst out of Pennsylvania. When you've got a death or a body that's been found that's been there for a while. Talk about how you guys use this program and the teachers or the students from Mercyhurst to come in to help figure out those kind of death scenes.
We found when the Patsy Hudson case that happened on Pearl, and then he took her and spread her all over Richland County up north. Okay, this was one that we had never done before, and my concern, as was Dr. Rickman's and Dr. Burwell was our deputy, as we were getting ready to make a transition, decided that the only way we would be successful is if we brought in an expert, not just us, an expert, because I mean everything was spread. The skull was at one location, the femur was at one location. I mean, we found parts all over the place, and so I had served on through the Ohio Coroner Association called OMORT, Ohio Mortuary Response Team. We go to disasters if we're tagged to go. And I met Dr. Dennis Dirtmont, who is the dean of Mercyhurst, the anthropology, forensic anthropology. So I called him. Stu said, call him and see what he can bring to us to the table. So I called him, and he said, let me bring my group down. He said, I've got about 12 or 13 students here that are going through their master's program to do this. And he said, we can provide you what you need. That's how we got tuned in on this. What they do is they come in with their group, and they literally do an autopsy on the scenes. I mean, it is miraculous what they do. They bring in GPS, they document everything, they photograph everything, and when you're dealing with long-term decomposition, you're only getting bones in most of those cases. And they're able to detect through x-rays or removal of that whether there was trauma to the bones or skull fractures. I mean, we can see that too, but they're able to document that for us, and that was very important for us to do. I mean, I go in and I start they don't do that. They clean that scene up. I mean, they clear it completely. So it helps us to be able to bring closure for that person to say, yes, this is Carl Hunnell or this is Bob Ball. We're positive this is through dental records, and that is not destroyed. And then, they've been a great asset for us.
How do they work on like dental records when they don't have a match for it? Like how does that work?
Usually we have a presumptive of who it is.
Right. Okay.
I mean, we've been fortunate to have that so far. We've not had somebody that's been dumped on us and John Doe. Yeah. They're John Doe until we identify them.
Right.
So we've been very fortunate to have that. The dental frame that we have, we've identified. Probably 4 or 5 through dental. The one that was over here was Sean Crate over there on Park Avenue East. Mm-hmm. She had been in there for 6 months. Of course, the deterioration of the weather and everything else. And this is Dennis Dirtmont's group. When I got there, I'm like, this is going to be crap. There's no way we're going to. She had a meth history, so her teeth was not the most noticeable. And really didn't have a lot of medical history to be able to pick up on. And Dennis looked at me and he said, this will be simple. She has a tattoo on her arm that we'll be able to infiltrate with water and bring that skin up because the skin was still there. That's how we identified her, was by a tattoo. Wow. So there's a lot of forensics, and that's why I tell the police officers, don't touch anything. Leave everything alone till we get a determination. And Dr. Dirtmont came in. This is the funny part, Carl, and you've been in the court system a long time, so you'll like this. They had an attorney up there that was trying to examine Dennis Dirtmont. He didn't know what questions to ask. So, that's what they specialize. They're forensic anthropologists who are good at what they do.
Right. I imagine if it's the decomposition is, like, the longer it takes, then the more likely it is to become a John Doe.
Yeah. It was. The 4th Street where we had that North Lake Park, she had been there for almost 4 months. And that hot, cold rain, everything else with it. So, and they were able to help me identify her.
Yeah, but there was a case when I was in Fostoria back in the 80s. It was they found a body floating near the city water treatment plant. There's a reservoir or whatever. And they fished. It was in January when they found the body, and I was there when they fished the body out. And as likely to happen, if a body's been in water for a long time and there's other living creatures in the water. There's no way to tell from the face who this person was. Was wearing a flannel shirt and blue jeans and was obviously bloated. And somebody remembered 8 months before that a guy had walked out of a factory at the end of his shift and just disappeared. So they reached into his pocket and they pulled out his wallet and they pulled out a set of keys. And they went to his house, and the guy who had disappeared 8 months earlier, one of those keys unlocked the back door. So it's like, okay, now we got to start. We got a pretty good idea who it is. Now we can do the forensic stuff. But yeah, when the dead guy's key unlocks the back door, it's a pretty good indication that there's some connection there.
That's called a clue, Carl.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for oversimplifying my oversimplification.
We had a case where 5 people were in a car accident and burnt, and we had 2 of the individuals identified. We were able. Ironically, we reached in their pockets, and we found their driver's license, and that kind of helped us take that. But we had one lady that was there we could not identify, and we were able to locate by sources, by interviewing, where she may live. So we got in her house. Family let us in her house. We were able to get her hair samples from her brush to be able to identify her through DNA. So those are things that Dirk Mott's group has showed us. They have worked with us to teach us, and I'm grateful for that.
How much has, and this is probably the last thing we get into today, but one of the things that that bothers me when I'm out at a scene, whether it's a fatal car accident, a house fire, or just a death scene inside a house and I'm standing out on the sidewalk, it bothers me sometimes when I see folks who are now citizen journalists and they're live streaming from the accident scene or from the house. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a reason that we don't rush to identify victims until, family members and at least family members have been notified. How much have you seen that change over the years now that everybody has access to a cell phone and can do live streaming from the scene? And how much does that concern you in terms of, you ought to let me talk to the family because you don't want to find out on a Facebook live stream that your loved one has died?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. Years ago, when you and I first started, we didn't battle Facebook, TikTok. We didn't have all that. Today, it's one of our worst enemies for us because how many times have you called me and say, hey, Bob, and I said, Carl, I haven't notified the family yet. Give me a chance. Same way with Lou from the News Journal. Same way, I'm not going to release it. And then 10 minutes later, it's on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had families get so irritated at me because of that. And I'm like, guys, I can't control the social media, unfortunately. I've had them where they've had pictures of the body. Jeez. Yeah, exactly.
Who does that? I know people do, but it's just
and they don't realize the damage that they've done to that family. To read about that, about their daughter, was involved in an explosion, and I just got into the scene, and it's already circulating because somebody at the scene said, this is so and so and so and so, and then the messenger gets the blunt, and it's sad because I don't want them reading about that. But it's hard to control. Yeah, it is a problem. And I don't think people realize, and I'm not saying people are vicious, but they don't realize the damage that they do to that family, especially if your mother's involved in an accident or something happened to her, or and you read about your mother. That's devastating.
Right, because you're showing an accident scene where you can clearly see a license plate in the car in the background, and
correct.
I just think there's professional ethics that kind of come into play. When you and I were on that Sunday morning, I think was it Easter Sunday? No, it wasn't Easter, but it was Sunday morning out at that house fire.
It was Easter.
It was Easter.
It was Easter Sunday. Yeah.
Out Washington Township. Yeah. And I'm taking pictures, and it came a time when they were going to be removing the body. That the gentleman had died. It was in a body bag, and I saw they were getting ready to do it, and I literally put my camera down. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm not going to take that picture. I don't, it might win awards. Somebody that could be a great picture. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to take it. Mm-hmm. I'm just not. But I don't know if the folks who are just out there doing this with a cell phone have any idea what that can do to somebody.
Yeah. I've had reporters, not what I call the good reporters that have had the cot when we're bringing the cot out would take a picture of that. It's like, come on, don't do that. Yeah. Don't discredit that family. They're traumatic. They're traumatized enough. They don't need to see that. And I mean, I went at it with some reporters, as you know I could do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I tell them, I don't want to see that again. If you're going to do that, I'm going to put you down. And they would try to sneak in. I mean, you get the larger media when you have people coming in from Cleveland and Columbus. They don't care.
Right.
I had when on the great case out there on 430, I had drones flying over the scene where I was at. I had to put up a tent just to protect us, and then you get up there and, I told them, get the drone out. Well, you can't take our drone down. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if the only thing you knew about Mansfield is what you watched on Cleveland and Columbus television, it's all homicides.
Yeah, it is. Exactly.
It's all homicides and scandal.
That's it's bad. And it's bad.
Yeah,
it's bad.
If it bleeds, it leads down in Mansfield. All right. Hey, folks, we're going to wrap up today's show on that note. Many thanks to Bob Ball from the Richland County Coroner's Office for joining us today. He is on call, but he did silence his phone just in case there was something you have to run out of. Bob, seriously, thanks for joining us today, and good luck with the RFA training.
Thanks, Carl.
And for now, thanks again to everybody for listening to the Newsman Weekly. I'll be back in a second to put a bow on this week's episode, but until then, remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.